My name's Rest. I'm a Soulsborne content creator with an emphasis on PvP. This video is a deep dive into the fundamentals, mechanics, and optimal use of Colossal Greatswords. When preparing for a video like this, I often spend months practicing and learning from people that are more experienced than me to bring you insightful knowledge on these weapons, and this video is no different. My goal of this video is to condense months of research into one digestible video that will help you improve your understanding and use of the weapon. There are many different topics that I'll be covering, from the basics, frame data and moveset, movement tech, input drops, animation blending and mix-ups, backstab tech, weapon selection, build optimization, ashes of war, weaknesses, and a showcase where I'll be covering the concepts covered in the video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you found the information helpful at all, or if you're just more confused than ever. Colossal Greatswords are among the slowest weapons in the game, offset by the fact that they have very good hyper armor and a lot of damage, allowing them to trade blows with an opponent and generally come out ahead. They tend to work really well against players that aren't as familiar with PvP, but they suffer in matches against more experienced opponents. Colossal swords are effectively rendered useless against daggers since the attack speed and recovery of a dagger is too fast for the weapon to punish. Due to the slow speed of these weapons, they have to be played very carefully in order to be effective, and on higher and higher latencies, it becomes next to impossible to ever land a hit. These flaws can be shored up with the use of an offhand weapon like a thrusting sword or dagger to cover the inherent weaknesses of the Colossal sword. But when an offhand is an available option, it's almost always better to choose to strike with the offhand weapon than it is to strike with the sword itself. Because of this, Colossal Greatswords are well and truly an off-meta pick. With the reduced speeds of the attacks that they have now, Colossal Swords are very easy to react to and require a lot of different skills to blend their animations so that they actually stand a chance at hitting their opponent. But even with all that extra effort, they still rely heavily on prediction and on the hopes that the opponent will make repeated mistakes. The standing and crouching R1s both start at the 17th frame, however the standing R1 generally doesn't connect until the 18th or 19th frame, given the shape of the hitbox. The major downside of the standing R1 versus the crouch attack is that the standing attack is heavily telegraphed and has a significantly longer recovery. The rolling attack is different from the crouch attack, being 2 frames faster. This is essential in allowing the weapon to actually be able to get out of being vortexed if you make a good roll. Otherwise, the Colossal Sword user would be in disadvantage with no way to escape. The second and third R1s are almost never a good option, being significantly slower than the first. The only time you should really ever be using the second R1 of the chain is if you know for a fact that your hit will connect, because if they manage to dodge, then you're definitely going to get punished. It's generally better to be patient and go for a better opportunity. The running and jumping R1s suffer from a similar problem as the standing R1s, being incredibly telegraphed and serving more as tools for specific scenarios. One of the benefits of the jumping and running attacks is the sweeping hitbox, that can hit players as they try and strafe past you. The running attack has 20 startup frames and the jump attack has 18 startup frames, but both have extremely long recovery, making them very dangerous to use. It's very easy to target Colossal Swords as a one-trick pony, only going for crouch attacks with very little use of any other attack in its moveset, but the reason for this is simple. Everything else sucks. Seriously, they're really bad. As an example, if you go for a standing R1, the opponent can simply walk behind you and backstab you, and there's literally nothing you can do about it if they time it right. You can't roll away from it, you can't jump away. If you go for another attack, you're definitely getting backstabbed. With crouch attacks being so central to the playstyle of Colossal Swords, it's important to be aware of the movement tech that will substantially improve your success with them. For this, we'll be going over block cancelling, wave dashing, and spins. A block cancel just refers to using the block with your weapon to prevent your character from getting stuck in a pivot animation. These pivot animations are a death sentence, causing you to get your character stuck, pulling you out of your crouch state, and being unable to dodge. By just briefly tapping the block button as you turn over 90 degrees, your character won't get pivot locked. Block cancelling can also improve the recovery speed of your animations, similar to crouching. If you hold block while recovering from an attack, then you can cancel the remaining recovery frames necessary to reset to the first part of your R1 chain. As soon as your character starts their block animation, then you can input your next attack. Wave dashing is the use of staggered crouch inputs to maintain a good amount of speed while having consistent access to your crouch attack. As you enter or leave crouch, your character will use the crouch attacks even while sprinting. So while holding sprint, moving forward, and rhythmically cycling your crouch state, you can maintain good spacing while being able to keep your crouching attack readied. Additionally, as you move through crouch to standing or standing to crouch, you can turn over 90 degrees without getting pivot locked, similar to how block cancelling does. In order to efficiently wave dash, you pretty much always need to be sprinting. This allows you to continue to rotate your character as you move, so you aren't just awkwardly shifting side to side while bobbing up and down. The last movement tech is something known as dreamer spins. It's basically the combination of block cancelling and crouch cancelling while holding sprint and moving the direction stick, causing your character to spin in a tight circle. If you simply pull back on the stick while holding sprint from static standing, it will cause you to pivot your character the first 180 degrees. From there, it's up to you how you continue. The whole reason for spins is just to make it more difficult for your opponent to distinguish when you're going for an attack or when you're just spinning in a circle. After you pivot your first 180, if you input an attack, your character will pivot the remaining 180 to launch the attack at the opponent. But to be honest, most people just use the spins for a meme, and not really to do anything practical, since newer players will just sort of freak out at the sight of the spins and start aggressively attacking your little tornado. Personally, I just find the spins to be a lot of fun, and they're less practical since they just cause the opponent to start panic rolling in circles and unable to catch them because of course they're on high latency, and then they just start attacking randomly blindly out of their panic rolls because of course they're panicking. And of course you get hit by it, because who the hell attacks there? You'd have to be a crazy person to attack there. You'd have to be a crazy person in a room. A rubber room filled with rats. But if you weren't crazy already, you will be, when you start trying to do all this ridiculous movement crap that's necessary to actually be able to use the weapon in a functional capacity, just to ultimately get cucked by random input drops that happen quite literally for no fucking reason. But I'm here to help. Well, sort of. Input drops are sort of just a part of what it means to be a Colossal Sword user, but being aware of them and being aware of some of the things that will cause them will help you avoid them. No, input drops! Like 3 times? Again? Another input drop? Fuck me, man. There's a lot of different type of input drops, and I'll likely be making a whole video covering them at some point in the future. But the most important ones for you to be aware of are the ones that occur during transitions. When transitioning between crouch and standing, if you input your attack at the last frame of the transition, then your input may be dropped. This also applies if you're crouch canceling to turn over 90 degrees to avoid the pivot animation, since it considers a pivot a type of transition. Another way that this might apply is if you hold block and tap crouch. If you continue to hold block as you come out of crouching, then your attack input will be dropped. From here, we get into animation blending and mix-ups. Animation blending is essential to Colossal Swords, otherwise all of your attacks become fully reactable and easily punishable. The 3 movement techs that I just went over are all essential components of animation blending, and as you improve with these, the better that your blending becomes. What this means for you as a player is not to always hit the attack button at every opportunity you see. Wiggle a little, do some twirls, and condition your opponent to be less reactive to every little move you make. The less reactive that they are, the easier it is to land your hits. When you animate the crouch R1, your character draws the sword over your right shoulder and then tilts to the left and forward. If you input your attack right as your character is turned back and to the right, then you can disguise the first 8 frames of the attack animation, giving your opponent only about 9 frames to be able to react to the animation. Another way to blend that requires much less precision is to delay your attack as you come out of crouch into standing. As long as you aren't touching the direction stick, you can delay an attack to very late into the standing animation while still being able to let out a crouch attack. This can be very deceptive as your opponent will just be expecting a normal standing R1. Zweihanders have a poke on their R2 which blends decently well enough into the crouch attack, and lets out fast enough to reaction roll catch if your opponent panic rolls the startup animation. The major downside to this is that it has extremely weak tracking, meaning that you'll likely have to unlock from your opponent and manually aim it in order to actually connect. The standing R1 can be blended to become nearly unreactable, but this is generally better to use as a way of continuing an attack chain since it requires extremely precise angling to work. After you land your crouch poke, unlock from the target and block cancel the recovery into an R1 facing to the right. Immediately after you start the R1, pull the direction stick back to the left and angle your camera at the ground. This will swing the first part of the hitbox of the standing R1 into where the opponent is standing, causing them to get hit instantly. You really only want to be using this on better players that are far less likely to panic roll out of hit stun of the first attack, expecting you to go for some roll catch. Whereas if someone panic rolls out of hit stun, then you'll have extra long recovery frames than you would if you had simply gone for another crouch attack. Another great tool to help you blend your animations is with the use of drawstring grease. Drawstring grease is great because it has a prominent animation that will help cause your opponent to panic roll right when you need them to so that you can land a roll catch. But the other thing that drawstring grease does is it lets you move freely in any direction without the risk of a pivot, so you can quickly 180 away from your opponent to optimize your spacing, so even if the opponent attacks at the side of the animation instead of rolling, then you can be at a safe distance to be able to punish it. Once you have your blending down, it all comes to mix-ups. Changing up the timing of your attacks based on how your opponent responds to how you've conditioned them. When you land the first hit on your opponent, I find it safest to always go for the quick poke to prevent them from being able to mash out a hit stun. If you go for a quick poke at the earliest frame possible, then they cannot jump, they cannot run, and they can't attack at a hit stun, and they'll be forced to roll in order to escape. Once they're conditioned to roll, then you can introduce some extra spins after the first poke to roll catch on prediction of the panic roll. Anytime that you delay for a roll catch, it's really important that you carefully watch what your opponent is doing, because you're giving them the freedom and space to punish you if you attempt to go for a roll catch. If the player decides to jump or attack out of hit stun and you're not prepared for it, then you'll lose your advantage that you've worked so hard for. Generally, it's always better for you to roll away rather than challenge the attempt to mash out a hit stun with an attack of your own. I find that a lot of mix-ups come from neutral, where I get close to my opponent or put them in range without ever going for an attack until they're well and truly conditioned that they are safe, then hit them when they least expect it. Playing with Colossal swords is more mind games than anything else. In my previous video, I talked about frame traps and how you should never roll in against straight swords, katanas, and other small weapon classes since they're guaranteed damage anytime you rolled into them. Colossal swords have the opposite problem, where if the opponent rolls into your attack, then the opponent immediately gets priority and you're forced to back off instead. This means that many players will be rolling in toward you. So what do you do about it? Well, backstab them, obviously. Colossal swords can easily set up the opportunity for a backstab just by the nature that people will want to roll in toward you when you're using the weapon. The backstab is free if they panic roll in out of hit stun to escape the quick poke, but in many cases all you have to do is make them think that you might attack them. There's two backstabs that you want to always be on the lookout for: roll-ins out of hit stun, and panic rolls in neutral. If your opponent tends to panic roll toward you when you approach them in neutral, then you can reposition yourself for a roll catch as they roll past you. This is very consistent and works very well if you incorporate grease onto your weapon to encourage the panic roll. You can soft swap to a misery cord for this, but swapping often costs you precious frames that might make you miss a backstab that would otherwise have been free if you had just stayed on the Greatsword. The other backstab is panic rolls straightforward out of hit stun. This one actually requires a soft swap misery cord, since soft swapping actually cancels the recovery of your crouch poke, allows you the extra time to set up the grab. It works best if you land the crouch poke from max range, since you want to funnel the direction that your opponent rolls in. Once you land a hit, soft swap, walk forward 2 steps, loop to the right, and turn around toward where you were just standing as you landed the hit, and get the backstab as they exit their roll. For this reason, I'd argue that it's an absolute must to keep a soft swap misery cord on hand at all times. Now, you've been looking through the list trying to decide which Colossal sword to use, and if you're not dead set on a particular build, then the Guts Greatsword is the way to go. This one's usually referred to as the Gugs. It has the longest range with the highest damage output on an optimized build at meta level. Anything with split damage scaling like the Royal Greatsword is going to have less overall damage output, since non-physical damage will not benefit from piercing damage of your crouch attacks. The Zweihander is a great option if you're on a dex build, since the stat requirements are so much lower than the Guts Greatsword, and it scales fairly well in a dexterity build, while having the second most amount of range. As an honorable mention, I'll point out the Godslayer Greatsword, which has a number of unique true combos in its moveset, and I encourage you to go check out Zeus's video on this weapon to see all the cool things that you can do with it. But given its high stat requirements and reduced range, I generally don't feel that it compares to the Gugs. In terms of build optimization, the Gugs works best on a strength build, while the Zwei is the best option for dex builds. Strength builds benefit from the two-handed strength bonus that they get, where you get an extra 50% strength when you two-hand a weapon. So at 54 strength, then you reach the soft cap for strength scaling. That isn't to say that you can't go higher, you can invest all the way up to 99 strength and still benefit from the bonus, but you just won't be getting as much damage per point. So generally, a build that I'd run would have 60 vigor, 40 endurance, 54 strength, and 18 dexterity. In terms of talismans, you really benefit the most from Spirit Talisman for the bonus counter damage, and I really recommend Bull Goat Talisman so that you can trade your crouch attacks into something like a two-handed great weapon. Great Dwarf's Arsenal is pretty much a must to carry the huge weight of the weapons and armor, and on the 4th slot, Kindred of Rot Talisman can go a long way. Since your attacks are so difficult to land, status pressure can actually guarantee damage for you where you might otherwise be unable to hit your opponent. If you rot or poison your opponent, then you can either punish the bolus with massive damage of a jump attack, or let the status tick away for free damage over time. There's a few Ashes of War that work fairly well with this weapon class. Chilling Mist and Poison Mist are great options that can roll catch a panic roll after landing your crouch attack, or allow you to trade with a hyper armor against another colossal weapon. Troll's Roar is a fun way to blow opponents off a cliff with a fairly subtle startup that lands pretty consistently. Golden Land and Waves of Darkness are other great options that give you enough hyper armor to tank a jumping attack and provide some amount of chip damage. Now, my buddy, It's Montage, is dead set and determined to convince the world that Stamp Uppercut is the true, superior, and ultimate Ash of War for the Gugs, but I'll let him speak for himself on that. Go check out his video, link in the description. Colossal swords are one of the most challenging weapons in the game to use against a skilled opponent. They require a ton of different techniques, skills, and solid fundamentals in order to use them effectively, but even with all the tech in the world, there's still a number of things that will cause you a lot of headache when using this weapon. Colossal swords are the most backstabbable weapons in the game. Every attack in the moveset can either be strafed or rolled in to line up a backstab that the user can't escape. The crouch and rolling attacks have a very thin hitbox with weak tracking to the left, so if a person just sprints to the left, then they can land a backstab on you. They can't do this out of hit stun or while in recovery of their own attack, so knowing when it's safe to go for an attack of your own that won't result in a dagger in your back is a skill that will take some practice. The standing R1s, jumping attacks, and running attacks all have incredibly long recovery, and a person can quite literally walk past you to land a backstab that you can't escape if they time it right. If you can tell that your opponent is lining you up for a backstab, then your best solution is to be patient, wait for them to mess up their positioning in order to force a roll or land a hit. You can unlock and free aim your attacks to prevent a backstab, but unlike other weapons like Serpent Hunter and Heavy Thrusting Swords, which can sweep their hitbox over 180 degrees, Colossal Swords have only a 2-frame attack. So trying to nail an opponent that's sprinting around you just isn't worth the risk. Another major weakness of the Colossal Sword is the lack of anti-air. The hitbox is deceptively thin, and if you delay your quick poke even by a frame, then the opponent can jump out a hit stun to get over your hitbox and land a jump attack on you. Because of this, peeling away from the opponent in order to land a roll catch tends to be a better option than pushing into them. If you peel away, then you can create enough distance to avoid the potential jump attack and punish it with an attack of your own. You can always unlock and manually aim upwards to try and snipe them out of the air. This usually isn't worth the risk, and you're better off peeling to a safe distance. Weapons that have strong whiff punish potential and low recovery on their attacks, such as halberds, straight swords, and daggers, all have a very strong matchup against Colossal Swords. Halberds are very difficult to space punish, and if you roll the halberd attack, then they can swipe at you with their offhand weapon before rolling away to safety without risking any damage from you. Daggers in general are a hard counter to Colossal Swords, being able to always land a hit in between your attacks, no matter how well you blend or space out your movement. Your best bet for dealing with them is just to switch to a better weapon. But this all gets much worse on higher and higher latency. The main strength of the Colossal Sword is being able to threaten the potential of a roll catch if the opponent panic rolls, trapping them in a vortex of attacks where they either have to calm the hell down and properly react to what you're doing, or call it the 50-50 to escape the vortex. But at over 160 milliseconds of latency, the opponent can freely roll twice to escape anything that you try and do. I covered this in my last video regarding frame traps, but essentially at 160 milliseconds of latency, iframes begin to overlap, and if the opponent rolls twice in a row, then your hit will not land no matter how precise your timing is, leaving you with no way to maintain your pressure against your opponent. Your best bet is for them to mess up in some other way, giving you another opportunity. Colossal Swords are very difficult to use efficiently, but they can be a lot of fun when you start to get it down. You'll get backstabbed, a lot. You'll get chipped down to death by daggers, jump attacks spammed by straight swords, and shot down by mages spamming pebbles at you, and that's just part of what it means to be a Colossal Sword user. There's no counterplay to those things, other than to spin really fast in circles and hope they get dizzy and fall out of their gaming chair. But that's the game we play. Make the most of it, have fun, and keep spinning. I had a lot of help with this video from a lot of different people, most notably Metaljonus, who created and wrote the custom music that I commissioned him for the intro of this video. He does amazing work, and I have all of his links in the description. And another massive thanks to Agron, who coached me in the use of Colossal Swords. From this point in the video, I'll be showcasing the concepts covered in the video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get into the fights. For these fights, I was using my strength build with the Gugs and Poison or Rot Grease. At some point I ran out of Poison, so I switched over to Rot Grease. So my opponent and I acknowledge each other with a couple of spins. For me, nothing says instant friendship than when it's just me and the boys, spinning like Sonic the Hedgehog with our funny little chicken feather capes. I grease and spin to encourage a panic roll, but miss the roll catch, but throw out an unlocked jump attack, which hits its mark. This was a bad move for me because it depleted my stamina, and in hindsight, it really wasn't worth the risk. I see my opponent line up a shot, and I outspace it with one of my own, delay for a roll catch but miss. We set up again, and this time I grab the roll, and distance myself to regain some stamina. I throw out a running attack which whiffs, but he doesn't immediately pressure me, so I unlock and aim for an early hit on the second R1 to finish the fight. Next up is an opponent that I ran into a few times already, and I know that they have a bad habit of rolling in quite a lot. So I start off the fight by trying to see if I can get a backstab off of their whiff, but I angled badly and missed the grab. Contrary to popular belief, you really don't want to be overly aggressive when playing with Colossal Swords. They're very stamina intensive and very slow, so I don't want to be pushing people if I don't have to. I'd rather them come to me. At this point, I jump past my opponent and delay my attack to the landing frames so that I can turn it behind me and hit them as they try and close in. block cancelled my first R1, and block cancelled the recovery to make sure that they can't backstab me. And I jump in, which I'm able to space punish, and do a few spins to try and pick off a panic roll, but they do end up getting a swipe with their off dagger before backing off to safety. Their damage is really low, so I don't think that their build was optimized. They may even be using an unupgraded weapon, but I'm honestly not sure. At this point, I fucked up really bad and panic roll a few times after getting a pivot, which now they're glued to my back. So I go for a running attack hoping to try and catch them with the late hitbox, but they rolled it well. I try and bait them into a backstab whiff, but they don't go for the grab, so we reset here. At this point though, I feel pretty confident that I can get them to roll in, seeing how low their health is, so I bait a roll, swap to my dagger, and land a grab. My next opponent comes at me hot. Or cold, depending on how you look at it. And I roll in to backstab the Chilling Mist, but it doesn't give me the grab, so I take a bit of frost damage, and now we're fighting, I guess. So I roll his hits, make some distance, and set up a punish on a predicted running attack. Follow it up with a quick poke, which he panic rolls. With an opponent like this, it's always hard to tell what they're going to do because of how aggro brain they are. I roll catch him on the way in, delay to wait to see what he does, and roll catch him on the way out. Do a little twirl, and punish his attempt to mash out a hit stun with a quick poke to finish the fight. Curved Greatswords can be a little tough. Given their great running attacks, they can whiff punish any of your attacks really easily. We start off attempting to punish their whiffed attack, but we land a little bit late. But we get immediate information that the opponent will roll directly in. So we land our poke, swap to Misericord, and line up the backstab. But from this point on, they change strategies to generally rolling away from us, which is a good adaptation on their part. At this point, I anticipate a second running attack, and I try and trade it with my hyper armor, but they manage to hit me from neutral instead. So I break off and free aim a jump, and clip them to finish the fight. Starting off a fight with an emote is always a risk. There are some emotes that you can't roll out of, but in this case I just misclicked and backstabbed by mistake. But it's not until the second attack Phantom hits me from a mile away that I realize just how bad the latency is. I get pretty aggressive here, feeling confident that I can react roll the spears and see if I can catch them slipping. I dead angle a jump, which connects, and go for a poke just in case they try and mash out a hit stun. They double roll toward me, so I preemptively throw out a shot to punish the attack. I disengage, but they're able to nail me with some crazy Phantom Rage on a jumping attack, which brings me all the way down to half health. Now, if you read the patch notes, you would have known that Aim Punch was fixed. Well, it wasn't, so joke's on you for believing in FromSoft. But my opponent is now down to a sliver of their health, and I don't want to mess around with these spears, so I pull out the superior dagger and finish the fight with a little swipe after strafing their attack. 2Cat, in my opinion, is probably one of the best setups right now, sitting just behind straight swords, and they have excellent matchup against Colossal swords with their superior speed, great jumping and crouch attacks, short recovery, and ability to frame trap the opponent. The fight starts off as they go for sword dance right from neutral, which I trade with my poke, and go for a quick poke to stop them from mashing. We disengage, and I get time to fix my talismans. We have really high latency though, and it's almost impossible for me to punish their running R2 as they double a roll away to safety. In high latency fights like this, the quick poke is always a good option to at least keep you protected. We go through a few more exchanges, but neither of us is really taking any damage, and I'm not getting enough hits in to be able to get a status proc. But eventually, we manage to outspace the running attack again and punish their attempt to go for another sword dance, land a roll catch, and quick poke to interrupt another sword stance, which finishes the fight. My next opponent starts off with straight swords, but quickly swaps over to mirror me with the gugs of his own, and I give him a happy little spin. They go for a random R2, which I avoid, and roll catch them on the way out, grace to blend, and land another roll catch. I predict the mash, and dead angle a jump to punish it, getting them to very low health, and I set up an early hit on the R1, but they manage to escape it, taking no damage. At this point here, we have to reset, and they now have to start playing very carefully, being just one hit away from death. But they are doing a very good job of not panic rolling, whereas I just failed to roll at all and eat a big chunk of damage to the face. I jump in, delay to a running attack, which catches them at the tail end to finish the fight. For my next opponent, they start off with KGS, but switch over to CGS. Which honestly is probably a good call since it has a better running attack, which I immediately eat as I fail to space it. But they're playing very aggressively, so I go for a roll poke, expecting them to pressure, and then follow it up with quick pokes, predicting them to mash out a hit stun, which they do, 3 times. After the 3rd hit, I'm sure that they won't do it again, so I try and roll catch him with Chilling Mist and get a Frost proc. They jump in, and I hyper armor through the backswing to finish the fight. Every attempt to roll catch that you go for with the Colossal Sword is done so on prediction. You cannot roll catch on reaction, no matter how god gamer you are. So learning how to condition your opponent or bait a roll is a big part of playing the weapon, and no amount of me explaining this to you on how to wiggle will give you the information that you need. Practice with it, feel it out, and you'll get the hang of it. It just takes time and practice. My next opponent comes out with KGS, and they start out with an empty jump, which at least tells me to be aware of it with this opponent. They go for a second and then delay it to a standing attack, which I fail to space properly, taking a trade as a result. They break away, but on the next jump I have a better read on my spacing and manage to punish this one appropriately. I try to bait out a panic roll, but I didn't free aim, so the hit doesn't connect. I take the time to fix my talismans, pre-space, expecting them to do a jump into a running attack, but they go for an R2 instead. I bait another roll and get the hit, but once again fail to continue the chain. I get a random backstep input here by mistake, which ends up getting me hit, but he disengages and I end up closing the gap. At this point I've only been reactive to him, so I throw out a blended R1, which he fails to react, and then blend another one to finish the fight. Playing Colossal Sword is all about conditioning, and I think of this fight as a great example. We trade with my opponent's attack and throw a quick post to prevent his attempts to mash out a hit stun, which he does multiple times. I stop the chain to see what he does, and he promptly starts panic rolling away. I gave him a lot of space here so I don't get to punish the bolus, but we see him going for his jumping R2, and instead of punishing it, I bait the roll now that he's conditioned and get the catch to finish the fight. Now, we all have different ideas of what's considered honest or toxic, what makes a person a shitter, and it's easy to just throw out labels on people, judging them for what armor that they're wearing, the weapons that they're using, and people even judge you for the way you're moving. If people wave dash or if you spin, then people will immediately target you as a bad person. But in the wise words of a professional hockey player once said,
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
Now, I don't know why this dude started throwing such a tantrum, but when he came out with the "come at me bro," I knew it had to be done. There's 2 main weapons that you may have heard of. The finger and the ball sack. And when you're having a bad day, you're feeling down in the dumps, nothing like a little finger and a little ball sack to brighten your day. Now, from this point in the video, I have a couple of special fights with some very experienced players that were hanging out in a fight club with me over on my Twitch stream. I decided to leave these as live commentary because honestly, they're just a lot of fun and I think you'll enjoy it. Let me know in the comments if you like this style and if you'd like to see me do more stuff like this. That's not what I meant to do. That's not what I meant. No, I didn't mean to roll! Nobody told you to roll there! Huh? Anybody wanna... What? That was fucking weird, man. No, I missed it! What do you mean, Alice? No jumpy. That was bad. Out of the way! I can lock onto you. I tried to dodge. You're insane for that. Blah! There we go. Oh, that's unfortunate. No, why the neutral jumps? Yeah, it doesn't feel good, does it? Ow. I thought I rolled. Well played. Oh, I wasn't even looking at the screen. Okay. Okay. Oh no, you didn't roll! What are you? How much better can I get? I can't punish it any better.
Hello, gamers.
Am I... Hello? Come on, menu. Hi? Thank you. That's not what I meant to do. Sorry about that. No, I input dropped like 3 times. Again? Another input drop? Fuck me, man. Ah. I missed. That was like I needed to get that punish. GG. Hi, IP'd. No, I was too late! All that work! GG's. Like, I don't honestly know how to get in against that kind of setup with this, because I can't space. Oh, shit. No way. You're insane, dude. Okay. No! I couldn't roll. Couldn't roll. Ah, shit. No! I tried! Oh, that was bad. GG. Nicely played. Ah. Never should go for that, but I did it anyway. I didn't mean to do that! Fuck! That's not good. No, I missed it! Fuck! I had my opportunity and I fucked up every single input possible. Nice! I can't believe that doesn't punish. I didn't mean to do that! Yeah, deserved. Oh, a beautiful swap. Holy shit. I'm gonna be stupid. No, no roll.